Hello students, I'm Aanchal Sharma, your educator. In this video, we are going to talk about different poets who are talking from the margins. So they are at the periphery and they're raising their own voices. Hence, the title or this video, the name that I've given is The Poetry from the Margins. We're going to discuss two or three very important poets who are talking from the margins. They are either talking about their own queerness, they're coming forward talking about their own sexuality, or there's someone who are writing about their own experiences in life and the hardships they are facing. So let us discuss. First of all, we're talking about the queer writing. The queer writing in Indian English writing is the topic that we are going to discuss. So the queer writing started not very, it does not start very early in our English writing, because this topic was considered as a taboo, something that people should be ashamed of if they want to talk about. So talking about your own sexuality was something that was not granted, or that was not easy. It was as simple as forbidden for everyone to talk about their own sexuality or about their own feelings. Whenever we see if there is a woman or a man who is talking about their own sexual orientations, they were either scum or they were either not openly talking about it. But we saw that the queer writing started around in 1990, and nowadays it is not that much a taboo as it was before. So the theme of homosexuality is not a taboo anymore, and it is now gaining prominence. The people from diverse background are coming forward and talking about it. The homophobia, though it was very prevalent and it was very common, nowadays it is now challenged. It is again being challenged. So the discourse of homosexuality is challenging the normative approach of sexuality now, and poets are coming forward and talking about themselves. So there are different prominent poets who talk about their own sexuality. They have written different novels and poems. They come forward and talk about themselves. So some prominent names in the field of queer writings in the Indian English writing are Hoshang Merchant, Suniti Nam Joshi, Ruth Venita, Eunice D'Souza, Salim Kidwai. We have Vikram Seth, R.K. Ramanujan, and we have Firdoos Kanga, etc. So there are other poets as well who came forward and talked about their own sexuality, about their own queerness. So The Lion and the Antler is the first collection of queer poems by Salim Rakesh. So this is an important thing. You should remember, make your own notes. Also read about the other writings as well. In this class, we're going to discuss only few of them. Now let us start about discuss something about Yarana. It's related to gay writing in the South Asia. So Yarana, Gay Writings from South Asia, is an anthology. It's a collection of different poems of different males who came forward and wrote poetry. So Yarana, Gay Writings from South Asia is an anthology of male queer writing, popularly called as the gay writing, and it was published in 1999. This is in juxtaposition to another anthology, another contemporary anthology that came forward, Facing the Mirror, and this anthology was related to the lesbian writing. So Facing the Mirror, Lesbian Writing from South Asia, is another anthology that was talking about the lesbian experiences, and Yarana was talking about the male experiences. So we will be discussing Hoshang Merchant, and we will then discuss about Gopi Krishna Kotar. Both were important, and they were talking about their own experiences and how, being a queer, they should come forward and talk about themselves. So they are contributing to the rich culture and heritage of India in one way or another, and they are talking about their own feelings, and they are contributing to this oeuvre or this genre of writing. So in a very important poetry collection, Hyderabad Portrait, we see that Hoshang Merchant will talk about his own sexuality. So first of all, we are discussing about Hoshang Merchant. This picture in front of you is of Hoshang Merchant, someone who is very interested in mysticism, Hinduism, Buddhism, etc. And he will incorporate all of these things and will talk about the psychological problem a male faces if he is gay. So All my life I have loved is one poem that he has written, and he says that all my life I have loved strangeness and differences. He openly will talk about his own sexuality, and he said that I am not ashamed of anything, but I accept it with open hands. I am in love with my own strangeness, and I want to keep my own differences. In these lines that I have, they reveal that our poet, Hoshang Merchant, is talking about his own experiences. He is well versed in Hinduism and Sufism, and he merges all of this in his own poetic collections, and he talks and raises his own voice. He is someone who is the first gay poet to attempt to voice about his own queerness in order to generalize his own feelings and his own sufferings. So he is the first poet who came forward and talked about his own queerness, talked about his own experiences without being ashamed. He talked about his own sufferings and his own feelings. He puts it with different ingredients. And what are these ingredients of the dish that he is cooking? He will place a little bit psychology, mysticism, Hinduism, and he'll talk about different cultures, and he will talk about the different sexual ventures, and he will incorporate all of this and will present you a beautiful dish of beautiful poetries that we have by Hoshang Merchant. So he often says that he was reprimanded, he was shunned, people talked names about him, people never wanted him to write poetry because he was writing about his own experiences. The result out of this was his beautiful queer writing, for which he was often reprimanded. He himself states that I am Parsi by religion, Christian by education, Hindu by culture, and Sufi by persuasion. He considers that sex, food, money are very dangerous things. It is only poetry that gives me life. He says that what he is saying is without even caring of what people will say after he is gone. What people will say afterwards, he is not scared about it, but he just wants to talk about his own experiences. He believes that poetry or whatever he is writing is coming to him like the leaves come to the tree. So in the most nonchalant manner he is writing, because it is not the language that is being written by the poet, but that written language is his own writing. He's talking about himself. It is not man who writes the language, but it is the language that makes him write in the most natural manner. He said that my task is to write and to give voice to those who are dumb, who cannot write. I have loved different people, different men who were silent. I have loved that all the men that I love were always so silent, and now I am going to tell their own story. The beautiful boys I have loved were always too silent to tell their own story. I speak for those who could not speak. Yes, I was reprimanded always for talking too much, but I will still come forward and talk about it. I will raise my own voice. Being a person who's talking about gay literature, homosexuality, homophobia, he's also very respectful to womanhood as well. And in his poem, Ode to Great Mother, he talks about Lord Shiva and pays respect to the opposite gender as well. So he has no hatred for the other gender. He is just saying that he needs to talk about his own self. Right? There are different literary collections, different poetry collections that are important. So some of them are as follows. That this picture, you can take a screenshot. These are different poetry collections: Flower to Flame, Stone to Fruit. Then we have The Home and the Friend and the World. This is also important. Love's Permission. We have The Heart in Hiding, etc. These are the different poems that he has written. You need to remember that he is well versed in Sufism. So he has written a collection called as Sophiana poems. It is important, and it is made up of 52 different poems combined together. He is talking about the different experiences. The Birdless Cage, one poem that he has written, it also talks about, I think the date is wrong here, The Birdless Cage. He talks about what is the feeling that he is having, that how stuck he is. He needs to voice out and he needs to tell the different experiences that he has been facing. So these are the few poetry collections that he has written. Now, being good in poetry collections, he has also written other works and also written one novel which was autobiographical in nature. So, The Man Who Would Be Queen, that came out in 2012, is a work that is autobiographical in nature. So, it's an autobiographical fiction that he has written. Other works include The Forbidden Sex, The Indian Homosexuality, Yarana, that is the gay writing from South Asia, and it's a anthology that he has, a seminal anthology in the area of gay writing in India that he has contributed and started. Then we have Gopi Krishna Kotor. Gopi Krishna is another writer who is talking about his own sexuality. He is famous. Why? Because he has done some translations, and he is also writing things, poem related to the Bhakti movement also. So, Gopi Krishna is a founder of another poetry collection, the Poetry Chain. Again, he has written 4 novels, 3 plays, and a book of poems edited called as a New Book of Indian Poems in English. Other poetries that are important include Piccolo, Milestone to the Sun, Sunbirds in the Rain, Father, Wake Us in Passing, Nirvana, etc. So these are the few works that he has written: My Little Tsunami and Other Poems, The Colored Yolk and The Love in Vrindavan, Tell Me Neruda. This is important. Tell Me Neruda. This work is also important. And he has also written 2 poems that are about to get published. These are the book of poems, My Blue Almazans and The Sky. They are already in press. They can be released anytime soon. Also, a new novel called as The Chilanka, The Anklet, is also a book that he has written. So these are the few things that he is also writing, and he is coming forward to talk about his own self. You can take another screenshot, and these are the different poetry collections that he has written. Reverend Father Benedict Goes to Heaven and Other Poems, Father Wake Us in Passing, Mother Sonata, Milestone to the Sun. All of them are important. At least you should know the names of these collections. Tell Me Neruda, Vrindavan, The Colored Yolk of Love. Then we have Victoria Terminus. These are all important poetry collections that he has written. Now, this is the novel that he has written, The Bridge Over Karma. This is a novel that he has written, and he contributes to the Malayali culture as well. Other novels that he has written, the 3 novels that he has written, one is The Bridge Over Karma. Then we have The Presumed Guilty. Then we have Hill House, a view from the West Hill. There is one play that is also important. He has written The Nectar of Gods, and it is talking about the different myths related to the Malayalam culture. Fire in the Soul, The Mask of Death, The Woman in Flames are the other works. Also, he was very inspired by John Keats. You can also see The Mask of Death, The Final Days of John Keats. This is another work that he has written. Now let us talk about Dalit literature. So whenever we're talking about the poets who are talking from the margins, we know that these are the poets who are not being paid heed to. But today in this class, we'll talk about one poet, and her name is Meena, and she actually talks about, so we will talk about Meena Kandasamy, and she is talking about the experiences of a woman and how doubly marginalized they are. So she, being a woman, is oppressed, and being a Dalit, she is doubly oppressed. So in her own poetry, in the most lucid manner and in the most angry manner, she will bluntly talk about the problems that she is facing. She is another Kamala Das. We all have read Kamala Das. We know how strong she was and how deeply she was talking about her own love experiences, about her own sexuality, about the oppression she is having, and all of these things are very much found in Meena Alexander. So in Meena Kandasamy. So Meena Kandasamy is the Kamala Das. She is raising her voice and is talking about the hardships. The hardships she is facing, being a woman and also being a Dalit. So Dalit literature is basically based on the Dalit consciousness, and it represents the hard conditions, the hard lived experiences of the people who are talking from the marginalized. That is the marginalized Dalit people. The Dalit literature is basically a literature of resistance. They are talking about their own story, about their own history. They are coming forward and resisting against the people who are oppressing them. As in the mainstream literary canon, it is necessary to be a woman to represent their own life experiences. It is seen that the males are also not paying heed to the experiences that the women are having, right? And it is very difficult for them, being a male, to understand that how doubly oppressed the women are. So it is also necessary to have a woman writer in other marginalized classes. The only reason is patriarchy, which exists at the entry level, and this entry level patriarchy is not allowing the Dalit women, especially the women Dalit writers, to come forward and talk about themselves. The Dalit male writers are facing accusations for not providing the women Dalit writers to talk about themselves, and they are not given due spaces on which they can just stand and talk. So yes, male writers are still very popular when it comes to Dalit writing, but very few women writers or very few women poets are there. So we have Gopal Guru, who has edited different poetry collections. He also states that the Dalit male writers do not take serious note on the literary output of the Dalit women, and they somehow tend to dismiss it as well. The Dalit women rightly question why they are not considered on the top positions at any genre, whether it is Dalit literature as well. In different conferences and in different institutions, now women are coming forward and talking that why they are not given a proper voice to talk about. In an interview, Meena Kandasamy herself very boldly said that the poets have no access to grid. Their objective is the poem itself. I am what I am writing, what I am talking. However, we poets have to abstract our experiences to fit into the reader's expectations or the reader's experiences. We are all sharing the same space and the same time. Some great poets make their own space and their own times. We being women are not given that space. It comes as a surprise to know that Whitman, Melville and Dickinson were all gay. We do not know them as gay writers, but we know them as the transcendentalists even after 150 years. So these three very important writers, Whitman, we have Melville, and we have Dickinson, and all of them are not known for their gayness, for their queerness. But what is important, they are known for them being the transcendentalists and not for their own poetry collections. This is another transcendence, the incident of transcendence from the poetry as well. So who is a poet? A poet is someone, whatever they are writing about. So this language is also not taken very seriously, right? This is very evident in different poetries that Meena Kandasamy is talking and different works that she has written. So Meena Kandasamy was born in 1984 and she is an Indian poet. She is also a fiction writer, a translator, an activist from Chennai, Tamil Nadu, India. Right. So Meena published two collections of poetry that are important: Touch, very important, Touch, and Miss Militancy. This came out in 2010. Touch came in 2006, and then we have Miss Militancy. It came out in 2010. This and from different time periods, including 2001 to 2002, she also edited different collections and different magazines. The Dalit, the bi-monthly alternative English magazine of the Dalit Media and Network. So she has also been edited different magazines that are related to the Dalit literature also. This picture in front of you is of Meena Kandasamy. So the two important collections of poetry are Touch, it came out in 2006, and Miss Militancy, it came out in 2010. She also edited magazines like the Dalit, also one bi-monthly magazine of English of the different Dalit media, network is also something she edited. So Meena Kandasamy is a very prominent Indian poet in the contemporary poetry now. She is championed to be talking about the marginal section or the marginalized section, the society like the Dalits or the women. In her poetry, she raises the voice against the inequality and the systematic exploitation of different Dalits and the women as well. She uses her voice not only to expose the atrocities that the Dalit face, but also she will represent that in the most boiling manner within, and she's also talking about the prejudices that the people have. She will represent everything from the anger point of view, and I'll make you read one stanza as well, and it will be clear that how sarcastic and how sharp she is in talking about herself. Touch is a anthology. Touch is a poetry collection that is very important, and her first collection of poetry is called as a Touch, and it is talking about the fears and the experiences of a woman. It's a scathing attack on the perpetual social oppression of a Dalit. Kamala Das, whom she seems to follow in her choice of writing, is also someone who has written a foreword to the Kandaswamy's debut anthology of poems that is called as Touch. She says that the power of honest poetry is seen in the anthology or the poetry collection Touch. Das also praises the Indianness of her thought. So Kamala Das has written an introduction, and I would like to read something about Touch. So Kandaswamy's Touch is a very brilliant work. In that work, there is the one-page foreword written by the very prominent Indian poet Kamala Das. In this foreword, Kamala Das would talk about the Kandaswamy's experiences and spirit of resistance, and she will talk about the untouchability and the exercises that are being forced on the marginalized people and the oppressed people, oppressed members of the lowest Hindu caste, that is the Dalits. So what is the forward line? Let us read. Dying and then resurrecting herself again and again in the country that refuses to forget the unkind myths of caste, perhaps of religion. Meena carries as her twin self, her shadow, the dark cynicism of youth that must help her to survive. Happiness is a hollow world for fools to inhabit, cries Meena at the moment of revelation. Revelations come to her frequently. Prophecies linger at her lips, older by nearly half a century. This is what is written in the introduction to the work as well. India is described as the country that refused to forget the unkind myths of caste, class, religion. For this, Kandaswamy delicately dedicates the essence of her work to the untouchability that is being seen, and she is voicing her voice, and Kamala Das herself praises the Indianness of her thought. There are different other poems as well that for which she is famous. So she has written Mariama and the narration. So these are the other works that are talking about the sufferings of the Dalit and in generally about the women in particular, the Dalits in general and women in particular by the hands of the upper class men. In other works like Mascara and My Love speaks of rape. She won her first prize of an Indian poetry competition for the work called as Mascara and My Love Speaks of Rape, and in which she talks about the women experiences again. Then in the poem entitled Shame, she describes the fate of a gang rape girl who fails to gain any kind of sympathy from the people because she was a Dalit. She is talking about the victim. She being a victim was even more victimized. Why? Because she was a woman. She is a victim who is victimized again and again timely. In her poem For Sale, she reads the story of a Dalit who grew damn rich and thus was allowed to enter the temple which was otherwise shut for the other Dalit people. So For Sale is another poem in which she is talking about a man who grew very rich. Because he was very rich, he was allowed to enter a temple. So we are living in this country where we still face a lot of problems. Meena Kandasamy proves to be a strong defender of the human right, not just for the Dalit, but for the human beings as well. Her poetry comes from the furthest margin of the society. The social rights of the woman, class, and the caste system are the different areas, the different themes about which she is talking. Her aim is to assert a Dalit self, a identity, and to give a voice. And in her poetry collection, Touch, she is doing the same thing. Right? So, in Mariama, Meena expresses her anger of showing the difference between, she is showing the difference even in the God as well. Almighty is common for everyone and the savior for the whole mankind. But in this poetry collection, she said that unfortunately, it is only the upper caste men who can worship the God, and we cannot even worship the God who is there for everyone. We understand by upper caste gods and they are good girls and much married, and different virgins and different men are given chance to pray to the God as well. But we being oppressed are not given chance to talk or to pray to God as well. So in this poetry collection, Mariama, she says that even the God Almighty is only favoring the upper class people. She also talks about the excruciating pain in the poetry collection, in the poetry narration. Meena brings out the suffering of the Dalit woman who undergoes tough experiences and treatments, not only by the upper class men, but also by the different patriarchal norms about from their own husbands. They are facing problem. So they are doubly marginalized. Being a woman, they are oppressed at their home places. That is a patriarchal structure that is always there. So their own husbands, being Dalits, they are still oppressing the women. And of course, they are also oppressed by the upper class. So hence the woman becomes doubly marginalized. Meena Kandasamy raises the voice and gives voice to the voiceless people in her different poems. So Touch, that came out in 2006, Miss Militancy came out in 2010, We Are Not the Citizens came out in 2018. Novels that are important is The Gypsy Goddess, it came out in 2014, When I Hit You 2018, and we have Exquisite Candivers. Miss Militancy is a poem that is talking, it's a volume that talks about the myth of Kannagi, the heroine Kannagi, and it is based on the Tamil classic Silappatikaram that we have discussed in the previous video as well. She talks about how important it is for a woman to raise her own voice. With just one breast, she was able to burn the entire state and the entire kingdom. The Touch is also important. Touch here talks about, it is the first poetry collection and it has 84 poems in it. The whole work is divided into 7 sections and these 7 sections are Bring Him to Worship You, Touch, Add Some Spice, to that some contingent spot, Lines of Control, Slander is a Slaughterhouse, and Their Daughters. So these are the 7 collections in which we see that her work was divided. Now, what is the title talking about? The title word touch is itself very significant. There are underlined implications for it. Touch focuses upon the firm divisions of caste, which had accomplished thousands of India's untouchable to birth and thus assigned them to the inferior level of living. The Touch is talking about the polluted people. The work is divided into 7 sections. It critiques the male-dominated social framework. It questions and addresses about the woman's identity. It also celebrates the love and demand gender equality. This work talks about the caste-based discrimination. She also criticizes Gandhi for naming the Dalits a Harijan. She presents a counter narrative, a discourse towards the upper class society. She talks about the casteist mindset, and she raised a strong voice against this casteist mindset as well. In her poem only, this is one thing that she has written, and when you'll read these lines, you will understand that how much a sharp critique, how satirical and how bold she was in her poetry collections. She gives one algorithm for converting a Shudra girl into a Brahmin. How can you convert one Shudra to Brahmin? She says there are few steps, you need to follow them. Step 1, take a beautiful Shudra girl. Step 2, make her marry a Brahmin. Step 3, let her give birth to his female child. The female child would be there. Let this child marry a Brahmin now. Take a Brahmin, let her marry the Brahmin. Repeat the steps 3, 4 or 6 times. Display the end product. What is the end product? The end product is a Brahmin. The end. You only want this, right? She's saying you only want Brahmins in the country. You don't want other castes. It is very simple. You have few steps in front of you. You just take one Shudra girl and make her marry a Brahmin. They will produce a offspring. This offspring will be a female child. She'll let her give birth to his child and then marry that girl to a Brahmin. Repeat it few times. You will completely change. The product would be Brahmin at the end. So in the touch, she is talking about all of these things only. The motive behind choosing such parts is that she is talking about the experiences that the Dalit have in the daily life experiences. The title Touch is best set, and it talks about the idea of untouchability and how much of the topic itself, this touch, will show you that how wrong we are in treating them as such, right? So these were the few things that I wanted to discuss. We discussed about Hoshang Merchant, we discussed about other gay writers, we discussed about, I gave you different names and I want you to read about them as well. We discussed about Gopi Krishna, then we discussed about Meena Kandasamy, a very important writer. I want you to also know something about the novels she has written because they are important as well. So Miss Militancy is talking about the Silapatikaram myth. That is important. Touch has 7 sections. This thing is important. Also, these are the novels and you should read something about the novels as well. So, Meena Kandasamy is extremely important. Right. So, I think by this we have completed all the major poets that I wanted to discuss with you. And I hope you understood the things as well. If you have any doubt, you can write it in the comment section and I'll surely reply to you. Thank you.